welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is my actually on time for once February reading wrap up. So February wasn't a great month reading wise. Not only is it a shorter month, but it's also a very stressful month for me at work. So I've only read 6 things that I'm including in my wrap up because I defaulted to a lot of comfort reading Austen variations that I've already read, which, as you know, I don't include in my official statistics because I chew them up and spit them out like candy. And also because the stress triggers my back issues, while I've tried to keep up my exercise, the gym has been sporadic, which means reading at the gym has been sporadic as well. I also did start a few books that I just haven't, like longer books that I just haven't sort of had the energy to continue with. So there's that as well. But I did finish 6 things. So that's not too bad. Not too bad. Hopefully this month will be better. We'll see how we go. So I started the month by finishing off Uncanny Magazine issue 64, edited by Michael Damien Thomas. There are a couple of stories I really liked in this. There was one by Aliette de Bodard, which I have now forgotten what it was about. And there was one by Caroline M. Yoshim, which was like piecing together a history of a Fae-human war through 10 objects through history. And there was some time travel stuff, and yeah, so that was quite interesting. Then I read The Trade Deadline by A.L. Hurd. This is a queer hockey romance. So in this particular one, and I quite enjoyed it, and I think I even got teary over it, and laughed out loud, so that's a good sign. In this one, we've got a star player from Sweden, and a sort of mid-range player from, I think he's from the US, and they meet briefly and have sex at after World Juniors, where the Swedes won. But then they don't really see each other again until many, many years later when they're both in the NHL, and the Swedish player, Nils, gets caught kissing a male staff member by his coach and general manager, who threaten him and say, waive your no trade clause, we want to get rid of you. Or we're going to make things difficult for your partner, and we're going to make out it's all your fault and that you were pressuring him, which of course was not a thing. So he waives his no trade clause and ends up on a different team, which has our American player. Unfortunately, Nils does not remember what happened because he was so drunk celebrating, and he left the morning after before, I've forgotten the name, RJ. Before RJ, I think Ryan, maybe? Ryan Russell is maybe the name. He had to leave urgently the next morning because his grandfather was in hospital. And so there's all this misunderstandings at the minute. At the start, they're attracted to each other, but they're teammates. And RJ knows more about what happened than Nils, and Nils also is dealing with, he is the son of a previous famous player, and his brother also plays in the league, and he does not get on with his brother. And so they're having to get used to various things, and it's just really sweet. And then the trade deadline happens, and it's a whole drama. So the trade deadline is always a whole drama. The trade deadline is at the end of this coming week, so we're in for some drama. In the actual NHL. But yes, that was a fun read. I really, really liked that, and I'll probably try some more A.L. Hurd ones. Then I read Mr. Bingley's Return by Jan Roland, which is, I think, the 3rd or the 4th. I think it might be the 4th book in the Return series by Jan Roland, in which Bingley is not so easily duped, and in fact finds out Caroline has been lying to him when he discovers Jane's correspondence left carelessly somewhere in London. So he returns to Netherfield. Caroline then, in a panic, sends Darcy after him. Darcy just keeps... And Lizzie gets really frustrated because she can tell that Darcy is really frustrating in this one, because Darcy just keeps doubling down on his belief that Jane isn't actually interested. And to the point where even Miss Darcy comes to visit, and she's like, oh, it's obvious that they like each other. And Darcy's like, no, they don't. Jane doesn't like him. What? Then so Lizzie just keeps challenging him because she's so frustrated. And it was interesting, but not my favourite. Then I finally finished an audiobook that I've had on the go for a while. I took a long break from it because the point that I was at, I was just getting through a very, very difficult bit of it. And that is 10 Steps to Nanette, a memoir situation by Hannah Gadsby. So this is essentially Hannah, it's part memoir of her life, but only as it relates to the creation of Nanette and what led up to that. And so it talks a lot about the sexual abuse she suffered as a child, the way she interacts with the world, which eventually is revealed to be ADHD and autism, her mental health, all that sort of stuff. So there's some very uncomfortable stuff there. But it was a very good listen, and it's narrated by Hannah herself, who is very funny and very dry as usual. So it's really, really, really interesting read if you can manage to be okay with the really difficult topics that she talks about, because that was hard. So I'm also counting that as a queer story because, of course, Hannah is queer. She's a lesbian, and I think these days she identifies... I keep saying she. They identify as non-binary. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just not used to talking about Hannah, and Hannah is a very female name. So I'm defaulting, unfortunately. I need to stop myself from doing that, defaulting to the feminine pronoun. I think they are non-binary these days. So, yeah. And then I read To Bennett or Not to Bennett by J. George, which was a novella-length Austen variation. Didn't love it. This one was Elizabeth has sought refuge with the Gardners after lots of dramas, and she has to make the decision whether or not to let the Gardners adopt her instead of going back to the Bennets. And they end up, after Mrs. Gardner passes away, they end up giving her a season. Mr. Gardner gives her a season, and she interacts with the Ton and Mr. Darcy that way. Yeah, I didn't love this one. I'm not sure what it was. It just didn't really work for me. And then I finished off the month because I realised that while I had read 2 queer things, it was a very white month. I reread The Haunting of Tramcar 015 by Peter Jelly Clark, which is one of my favourite Peter Jelly Clark stories. It's a novella set in the world where 30 odd years back, a hole was punched in reality, and the jinn and magic and various creatures came through into Egypt, and it has accelerated Egypt's independence and modernization. And so this particular story, we have an agent of the ministry investigating a haunted tram car against the backdrop of protests by suffragettes as the vote approaches in Parliament as to whether the vote will be given to women. So it's a nice fun story, and I really, really enjoyed it. So it was a good reread. And, you know, I do like a reread, and I should reread some of these these stories by people of colour that I have read and loved because they're just as good as a reread as, you know, Jane Austen or Tamora Pierce or whatever. So yeah, I'm glad I reread that again. That's fun. I've got another reread underway at the moment as well. But those are the 6 things that I read in February. So I am behind schedule on my overall for the year. I am doing okay with queer and authors of colour, queer stories and authors of colour. I think I've read now, because I think I've read 4 queer stories, or with significant queer characters now. And 3 books with POC BIPOC authors. So I'm not doing too badly on that side of things. All of these were digital. So although I did start at least 1 physical book. So that was, no, I think I started at least 2 physical books. So there are some underway. So yeah, that was my February reading wrap up. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye.